My name is Melissa Kraft, and I serve as the president of National Park College's Cultural Diversity Awareness Committee. Along with my fellow officers and advisors, I would like to welcome you to our campus for this most iconic event. I would like to first introduce Dr. Ferris Allen, MPC Music Faculty and Director of the MPC Singers, and Ms. Akayla Witherspoon, Upward Bound Curriculum Coordinator, who will provide us with a special presentation of Let There Be Peace on Earth by Cy Miller and Jill Jackson. Thank you, Dr. Allen and Ms. Witherspoon. And now I would like to introduce our very special guest. She is one of Little Rock 9 with a lifelong commitment to peacemaking, environmental issues, developing youth leadership, diversity education and training, cross-cultural communication, and gender and social justice advocacy. She is an educator, a nonviolence and anti-racism facilitator, writer, and motivational speaker. She served in the Clinton administration as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Workforce Diversity at the Department of Interior. Her daughter, who is also here with us today, was born and raised in Northern Ontario, Canada, and moved to the United States in 1999. She earned a BA in Mass Communications and a minor in journalism at UALR. She received her master's degree at the Clinton School of Public Service in 2010. Her signature project there was an international public service project in Cape Town, South Africa, working with an NGO, the South African Education and Environment Project. She is a playwright, served as Chief of Interpretation at the Central High School National Historic Site in Little Rock, and is currently with the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian in New York. She is also her mother's speaking agent. Please help me welcome Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, and Spirit Tawfiq.
Wow.
Thank you.
That was absolutely beautiful. It's an honor to be here. And before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsors. The Women's Leadership Council, thank you very much. Lewis Architects and Engineers, Regions Bank, First Security Bank, the Rosenzweig Foundation, Daily Dish, the Gateway Community, Hot Springs School District, hey! Regard Group, Elmer Beard, Gail Carter, Steve and Teresa Holt, a cast of thousands at National Park College, including Nicole Herndon, Melanie Ritter, Cassandra Parks, Carrie Elliott, Valerie Lewis, Brad Hopper and team. A special thank you to the president, Dr. John Hogan, and I am so very thankful for the wonderful, gracious Darla Thurber, who invited Minnie Jean and myself to be here. Bravo. Thank you.
Well, you are very welcome. We have a funny story about how we got together. It started back in April, and although some spam filters almost did not let us connect, we connected, and we're here today. And it is so surreal that we have been cleaning our house and getting things in order to bring all of you to campus and to bring Minnie Jean and Spirit today. And before I start, we need to make a very important note that someone had a birthday this week who's sitting up here. Minnie Jean celebrated her 29th birthday Tuesday. And so...
Right. Okay.
Which makes me 7.
Which makes Spirit 7, yes. So I think that we should pause for just a moment and sing Minnie Jean happy birthday. Aww. I want to hear 400 people singing in this room happy birthday to Minnie Jean. So I have no tone. I'm going to let you guys do it and turn off my microphone and just mouth it from here. So on a count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Minnie Jean. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Woohoo. Lovely.
Well,
such a warm welcome here. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this, to have happy birthday.
So thank you for being born this week.
Oh, yeah.
We appreciate that. Well, the best place to start is usually at the beginning, and so I'd like to ask Minnie Jean to please tell us what happened on that day in 1957, the first day at Central High. And I need to mention that Minnie Jean, although she's 29 now, she was 15 when this happened. And so let that sink in for a moment. She was some of your ages when this happened, and she had to experience this at a young age. So if you don't mind,
okay,
please walk us through that day.
Okay, so I'll ask if anybody in here is 14. Okay, 15, of course. So the Little Rock Nine were 14 and 15 on the first day of school. So you could have been, if you were 14 or 15, you're perfect age for that. So let me say that, okay, it was really simple. on the intercom. I hate intercoms when I'm at school because they interrupt everything. But they came on the intercom at Horseman School, which was the new black school in Little Rock, which was built in the far East End. I wonder why. If you live in the Central District, sign this piece of paper. So my friend Thelma, I think there were 4 girls who said, okay, sure, why not? We can walk. And we put our name on the list with no great depth of thought. So one of the things, I do talk to lots of young people, and I want always to let people know that we don't have to be really deep about what we do. It's kind of, there's an Asian proverb that says, in order to climb a mountain, you have to take a step. So that step was to sign up, and I don't want you to think that it was anything heroic at all. So a whole summer of meeting with the administrators, and they said, you can't participate in any extracurricular activities. I'm thinking, I'm beautiful, I'm talented, I'll change that in a week. They said, there may be some catcalls. Catcalls, anybody know what that is? But you're not to answer back. Oh, I could have wished for some catcalls at the time. So on the first day that we went, we knew that the governor had called the Arkansas National Guard to surround the school, but we didn't exactly know why. Or some people did, I didn't. So when I met, my mom drove me. They were told the parents not to come on the main street. So my mom let me out, and my minister and 2 white ministers and 2 black ministers said, well, we'll walk with you. And I think several of us walked, and we went, and there's this crowd. It was like the American religious ceremony, you know, football. And it sounded like a sports event. It was a roar, but it was hatred. And it was very, you could feel the heat of the hate coming toward. And I had never been hated in my life. And then the soldiers are in front of us, and they're allowing the white kids to go in and not letting us go in. So all the photos I see of us standing, we look really bewildered. And let me tell you what the bewilderment is about. We're brainwashed equally in this country. You know, black kids watched Leave It to Beaver, all that. You know, we had the same sort of experiences. But, you know, we said all those anthems, and we were pledging allegiance, and we were talking about freedom and justice for all, and I come to that place, and people can hate me for no reason. So my heart was, first of all, in the still pictures, you cannot see how scared we were. Thank goodness. But it was such a shock to find out that all those things we believed and said about our country didn't apply to us. It was that people were willing to kill us because we wanted to go to Central High School, the most beautiful high school in America, sitting in the middle of the city. We thought it was ours because it was in our town. So, I think I have to let you ask more questions because there's a point which what happens with the fear. So I learned from the behavior of those people, I learned to be nonviolent, I knew what nonviolence meant because I saw violence firsthand. So that makes me a lifelong practitioner of nonviolence. And the first principle, I know I'm probably going, of Kingian nonviolence is nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. So thank you, Ma, because you made me this person I am.
Thank you. So most of us are familiar with the pictures. We've all seen those pictures, right, whenever the students were walking in, but we don't know what it was like once you got in the building and the rest of that day and the days that followed, the weeks and months that followed. So if you would share with us.
Well, it's interesting because Spirit was at the front desk of Central High School National Historic Site, and she probably knows more than I do about the violence because people would come in and disclose things to her. And when she would say, "Do you remember?" I would say, "No, I don't remember. I put that out of my mind." So what are some of the things people told you?
Well, you lived firsthand, so...
I know. But you can't carry that with you all the time. You just have to.
Let me think. I mean, so I can talk about how I came to learn because it was actually fascinating. I didn't grow up knowing that my mother was one of the Little Rock Nine or that she was a part of history. I grew up in Northern Ontario, Canada, as Melissa mentioned, and so I was a regular kid living a regular life, and it was not until the 8th grade until this was even brought up. Interestingly enough, in 1987 was the 30th anniversary, and we came to Little Rock as a family to commemorate the 30th anniversary. And I was a kid, I had no idea what was going on. We went to this beautiful mansion and we were hanging out with this little girl, and my little sister Layla and I were like, how come she has 2 playgrounds? We don't have 1 playground. She's an only child. We have 6 kids. She just had this elaborate setup, and she was extremely bright and articulated the purpose of the anniversary. It turns out that was Chelsea Clinton. We were at the governor's mansion, and we were hanging out because Governor Clinton and Hillary Clinton were honoring the Little Rock Nine. So I say that to say that made no sense to me as a kid. I asked her, what's so exciting? I never heard anything about you being one of the Little Rock Nine. So then it wasn't until the 8th grade that my mother took us to an event where she was speaking about her experience in Canada, and they played Eyes on the Prize, and anyone who's watched it, it's fabulous and the information is fantastic, but not necessarily for an 11-year-old. So that was the second point. So what really gave me a clear understanding that she was involved in something very important was when in 1992 or so, Melba Patillo released Warriors Don't Cry, which was a scholastic book. And so a book arrived in the mail that depicted my mother's experience, and that blew my mind. The second layer was in 1993, the Disney Ernest Green story came out. Can I just see who's seen the Ernest Green story? Awesome. It's still a wonderful movie. So here were Hollywood actors. Morris Chestnut was playing Ernest Green, and Monica Calhoun was playing my mother, and I'm like, you don't talk about this. Anytime we bring it up, you pretend like, oh yeah, that was something that happened a long time ago. Well, she couldn't hide anymore after Oprah Winfrey called. So fast forward, what does that have to do with the initial question? Once I found out that my mother was one of the Little Rock Nine, which was a group of young people who combated American racism and terrorism, I was so invigorated and enthusiastic and excited about learning more, and so I asked a million different questions. So that brings me to my putting myself in the young folks' shoes and thinking, like, I wanted to know day to day what it was like. And so I would ask her, what was it like at school? You have the images of September 4th, September 25th when they went in, but behind the scenes. When I was a teenager and I was thinking about, all I care about is my shoes and my hair, and do I look good, and am I cute, whatever, and my mother was getting kicked down the stairs every day. So once you guys got inside the school, they had their own soldier from the 101st Airborne to walk them to and from class. But they couldn't go in the change rooms, the bathrooms, the locker rooms, etc. So that's where a lot of the abuse took place. And so it's depicted in the Ernest Green story. I read about it in Warriors Don't Cry, but then I would come to her and ask her. On a day-to-day, the kids would walk on the back of their heels until they bled. The N-word was used all the time. Central's huge. There are stairs. They would throw food, hot soup, acid down the staircase. Some of the kids were pushed into lockers. Thelma had a defense mechanism where she took little thumbtacks and put it in her binder facing the other direction, so the next time she got body slammed, they got poked.
We call that creative nonviolence.
So, which leads me to when I did, by a twist of fate, end up working at Central High National Historic Site. You're right, people would come to me and divulge, this was me in the picture, I was at Central, or I remember, from around the world. But I was telling this story recently at a school in New York. One of the Arkansas National Guardsmen was in Little Rock for, I can't remember what particular reason, but there was an article that he was interviewed for, and he came to the historic site to speak to me specifically. And he said, I wanted to meet you because I want to know that speaking. He said, I was in the bathroom one day and they were going to shove her head down the toilet, and I prevented that from happening. And tears were in his eyes. And I went home and I asked her, and she had completely blacked that out. And that's nowhere to be found in the history books. And so the last thing I'll say, just from my perspective, is I always think about, okay, you had soldiers inside the school, yet you were still being abused, but you still had to go home. And you didn't have soldiers in your house. And that was what really seared in me, is thinking about like being a teenager trying to go to sleep at night and people screeching their tires around your house, and just that constant, incessant fear.
Okay.
Well, let's move forward a little bit now.
Okay.
I mean, there's no doubt the experiences you had lit a fire in you to affect change. And I think some folks are aware of the things that you've done since Central High, but maybe share a few experiences. And I would really like to talk also about your experience speaking when Malala, please tell me that you know who Malala is, okay? In 2014, when Malala received the Nobel Peace Prize, you were there and you spoke, and I think you were receiving an honor as well.
Probably, I can't remember.
Well, you are cute,
Okay,
so
well,
I'm sure you
I
received
think-
something there. But let's talk about that because it's important. That's another generation. We have another generation who could carry on the fire.
Yeah, and I want to say that I was particularly honored to be part of the ceremony. It was actually the Freedom Award given by the Constitution. It was a big deal.
Constitution Center.
And I was really honored to be asked to speak there. But the people who invited me went online and picked out my words and put together my speech. And so, we think, oh my God, she's from Pakistan. We don't have that. Yes, we did. Yes, we do. And so for the first time in these United States, somebody saw the similarity between her experience and ours. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get shot, but a lot of people really wanted to shoot me, okay? That was what their death threats said every day. I had a 3-year-old brother who was not to answer the phone, but if he got there first, because little kids back in the day, this is way back when they had dial phones and all, he would go racing to the phone. Then we would have to take it from him because somebody was saying, we're coming to kill you tonight. We're going to burn your house down. Everybody knew that he was a child. Can you imagine? Do you know any grown-up who would tell a 3-year-old that you're going to come to their house and burn the house down or you're going to kill them? So we talk about the Central High experience as being at the school, but you're right, it's a whole thing. So yes, I felt a great kinship with Malala. Mm-hmm. I just totally admire her. She didn't really know much about me, but when I walked out onto the stage, they gave me a roaring standing ovation. And then her people said, she's going to know everything about you. So then she did mention me in her thank you speech. So I think we need to show the heroics of young people. Mm-hmm. We need to compare. I don't care if you consider me a heroine or not, but I know that the Little Rock story inspires young people. She has an expression, I was failing math in high school and my mother was saving the world. And
thanks, Mother. I did say it, though.
You did say it. That's a direct quote, okay? So we need ways to inspire young people. We're not selling anything. We don't have any hats. We're talking about ordinary kids, and the whole point is, all of you who were 14 and 15, it could have been you, and that's the cool thing. And the real thing, one of our Little Rock Nine's mottos is, ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And what we want young people to know is sometimes you got to do something about something that is not good for people, and it's not good for you. And you get to do that, and you have the ability, the capability. Mm-hmm. That's the part I think we want to tell young people, that it's possible. And I know there are things in your lives, can I say piss you off? Yeah, I can. I know there are things in your lives that aren't pleasant, that don't honor you, that don't affirm you, and you're mad. So I say, don't get mad, get even. Do some, because anger is a waste. All your energy goes into different directions. It's a waste. So you focus that anger and get even, okay? So is that a bad thing? Say, don't get mad, get even?
No, you're cute. You can get away with it.
Okay, I'm 29. Or is it 29?
Would you like your one?
And this is for both of you to ponder and share. How would you compare the climate of our nation today regarding diversity and racism compared to that of your youth and your early lives? And do you feel like we've made true progress?
Do I get to say?
You go first.
Mm-hmm. Not enough, okay. We were at Harvard and the University of Pittsburgh and the graduate education departments, and they're working on integration projects. And I went in and I said, oh my God, you guys, you're doing stuff that we've been doing for 60 years. I'm horrified by that. And she says, don't be careful, be nice, be nice. I can't be nice. Truth is not nice. And then what happened is they knew that too. And we're demoralized by having to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And our grad students and our young people are having to keep doing this. We should be ashamed as a society. We owe our children so much more. And we pretend we love kids, but we really don't. So why can't we figure this out? Why can't we figure this out?
Well, we had a great conversation last night.
Yeah.
And my processing of what's going on today and what needs to change is we need to face history. We are not teaching history truthfully. And so the foundation from which we're building on is not based on reality. And so the reason why I love to have the opportunity to speak with my mother is because I consider myself a bridge between generations. When I talk to young people and they're like looking at these black and white photographs of the Little Rock Nine, I'm like, I can call my mom on FaceTime right now. She's in her 70s, she's on and popping, she's very energetic. I mean, in other words, this is a snap in terms of how recent this is in our history. And I am a huge proponent of knowing our history as the only foundation from which we can build on. I am extremely proud of what's going on in this country as it relates to young people being on the front lines and sacrificing so much. And that's why it's so important to know the story of the Little Rock Nine, so that you guys, as young people, know what is in you and what you're capable of and the power that you have, that you can actually influence your teachers to make changes in your classroom, in your schools, in your community. To Serena Williams and the many creative ways and from so many different directions that people are agents of change. It takes all people, and you have to be really innovative in terms of how to adapt to the current climate. So, like you said, what did you call it? American religion football? Well, I mean, that is an
Arkansas, are you kidding me?
It's an institution, and so you have NFL players that are risking their entire careers to stand up and say, this is injustice, and I refuse. A paycheck is not going to keep me from standing. It will continue on. It's at the heart of what we talk about every single day.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because they were arrested with me when we were saving old growth forests. For a long time, they knew the phrase, Free Mandela, Jail Botha, but they didn't know what the reason was, but that's seared in their minds because those are the kinds of activisms. And, you know, we have to be, it's all one issue. That's the key here. All of these things that we oppose are basically about one thing. I mean, we're talking about the environment, we're talking about jobs, we're talking about mountaintop mining, we're talking about forestry, we're caring. I'm going to go even further and say it's about love. It's about love for ourselves and love for others. It doesn't get any, it's simple, and we don't get it because that's too much, but really it is about love for ourselves first and then love for others. So it's got, you know, all the religions say that. I know we say some don't, but they all do. And they're sort of the bedrock of human relations.
And another thing to add on to that is part of this ongoing thread of conversation is the fact that racism hurts all children, all people. Yeah. And so I feel as though there's a polarization when it comes to racism or just the history of this country where automatically we think of black and whites or, you know what I mean? And so I love the way that nonviolence and the beloved community surrounds that conversation and the narrative around how this impacts us all. It is not Black history, as you say. My mother one day, she said, I'm not Black history, I am world history. I said, okay.
Well, I just came back from New Zealand, and honestly, they treated me like a movie star. I was on every television show, in every newspaper, and whenever I walked anywhere, oh, Minnie Jean, oh, Minnie Jean, Minnie Jean. And I was hugged by 3,000 kids, okay? And I came back without a cold, okay? So, that was...
Wow.
But how that feels, how they... I don't need their admiration, but I need them to know this story so they know themselves. And that's the story of Little Rock. It's, who cares, governors and all that. Those people came because of me. So I created the governor of Arkansas and the president of the United States, and we made Presidents Act. And I tell kids all the time, you can make a President Act. They made Presidents Act in Selma. They made President Acts in Birmingham. We made Presidents Act in Little Rock.
And they're making Presidents Act
and
today.
The Parkland kids, who cares whether the president acts? They're going to make somebody act. They made the Society Act and come forward finally. So I got inspired. So I'm going to shut up in a minute, but let me tell you how the Parkland kids were accused. You know, these are Parkland, Florida kids. They were accused of all kinds of things. Guess what? The Little Rock Nine were accused of the same thing. They were saying that we were from New York and somebody paid us to come and go to Central, that we were communists and that we were taught by the Russians. All kinds of stuff. I mean, whenever, we like those words. So to say the things about the Parkland kids who had that experience. Hey, if you didn't have the experience, then you can't tell them what to do, right? You can't tell them how they should act, what they should think, and how they should grieve, because it is a form of grievance. So in fact, the Parkland kids didn't get mad, they got even, okay? And they will continue to do. So that's the perfect example of turning tragedy around, shifting it, reframing it, making it into something useful. So we have that opportunity every day. It's so special. Like first of all, I have the sharpest tongue of anyone you've ever met. But I'm also really optimistic about the persistence of the human spirit, which is why I really mostly talk to kids, okay? Because when you're talking to children, they want to learn. When you're talking to grown-ups, you're trying to change their minds. So I'd rather be talking to people who want to learn and who can hear and who are amazing about what's fair, what's not fair, curiosity, thoughtfulness. Those are embodied in the 5th grade and in great numbers. So we really, really, really should spend more time with 5th graders. Because later they become 6th graders and on. But it's a very special place. Okay, sorry, I did go off.
You did just fine. I'm going to ask one more question that you have pretty much already answered, but then I want to provide some time for some Q&A from the audience. And so now you're distracted. You're not going to listen to the next question because you've got a question that you want to ask, but we will ask 3 or 4 questions as time allows. But first, and like I said, you've already answered this to a point, but what should the youth today, and all of us for that matter, be doing to further peace and reconciliation?
Start. Oh, okay. First of all, they have to demand that they're getting the right information. And that's on college campuses, in elementary schools, in high schools, in every social institution, because you're not getting the right information. George Washington didn't even have a cherry tree, okay? He had a lot of slaves, okay? We need to know that. Thomas Jefferson had a lot of slaves. I was talking last night, and I say, did we know that it is slavery that built the wealth of the Western world? Huge, huge wealth. And the funny thing is those planters treated poor white people almost the same way they did black people. That's why they were living in Appalachia, because they wouldn't let them have 1 inch of arable land. Do you know that? Nope. If I talk to somebody from Appalachia, they do not know that they were relegated to that place because the rich planters wouldn't give them 1 inch of land. So if we know these things about our history, then we become more thoughtful people, and we're not so easily manipulated by people who want power. So if we knew that slavery contributed to the huge wealth of the Western world, then you can't be saying, I want my country back, because, honey, you got to pay me if you... So how can you have, okay, I call it hashtag profound intentional ignorance. And that's what keeps us from being able to communicate with each other, to work together in common goals. Because we're so proud. Intentional. And that's why kids have to demand that they have some truth. One of the things, when I got expelled from Central, I went to a school, and it's really interesting because I lived with Mamie and Kenneth Clark, and Mamie Phipps is from Hot Springs, Arkansas. I lived with the center of black intelligentsia. You never knew whether James Baldwin or Ralph Ellison or who was coming for dinner, okay? Guess who's coming to dinner at the Clarks, okay. But I went to a school, a scholarship to New Lincoln School, which was predominantly Jewish. And I knew nothing about the Holocaust. I didn't learn about it in the black school, and I didn't learn about it in the white school. So I was miseducated, okay? We can't do that to our children. We can't miseducate them and pretend that they're educated. So there's a lot of stuff. We have access to information that has never been possible before. Anytime I want to know something, I Google it, okay? I mean, my poor daughter, my oldest daughter, when she wanted to know a word, we had a big dictionary, remember, in the middle of the floor. And if she didn't know the word, she had to go turn the pages and look at the word and then use it in a sentence. I don't even have to do that anymore, right? So we have access to information that we've never had before. So you have to ask for truth in your schools. Little Rock desegregation crisis is relegated to the back of the book. No, shouldn't be. And it's called Black history. No, honey, it's world history, because just about any place I go in the world, they know this story. Kids in South Africa. You know what? They use Little Rock to teach kids in South Africa what apartheid used to be. There you go, America. People got your number, okay? In Northern Ireland, it's considered, the American Civil Rights Movement is considered crucial to the movements that they've had. So I could walk down the street in Belfast and some kid will go, "Are you Minnie Jean?" Profound intentional ignorance. We're in a learning institution. That's my challenge. Stop being so profoundly, intentionally ignorant, because it doesn't look good.
I'll let her have that. Hashtag profound intentional ignorance. Hashtag
Right
Minnie Jean.
Well, let's take some questions from you all. We'll try it this way. You can raise your hand if you have a question. We'll call on you. And if you wouldn't mind to just stand up, you could state your name and whether or not you're from a high school or if you're a MPC student or just community member, whoever you are, just identify yourself and to ask your question fairly loudly. Or if we need to, I can bring this to you. We have a hand raised right here.
I'm a nobody.
That is no such thing.
This is tremendous. Have you ever had any of the white children that attended Central High School give you an official apology and reconciliation? And the second part of my question is, did you ever get any payments from Paul McCartney when he wrote Blackbird about his
No, we didn't.
Did you all
He
hear
should
those
have paid,
questions?
right.
Did you all get that? Okay.
Okay, tell them about Blackbird sitting on a... Take these golden wings and learn to fly. Okay, that's written about the Little Rock crisis. No, he didn't pay. I got into my first apology. Okay, let me break it down. 20 nice kids. That meant 2 kids per each who risked trying to be nice to us, and they got beaten up. Okay, 20 nice kids. About 200 bad kids who kept up the terror. But 1,900 silent witnesses, people who stood by and said nothing. So Elie Wiesel, who's a Holocaust survivor, says, sometimes it's not those who do the deed, it's those who stand by and say nothing. So that's a real important lesson from Central High School. So my first apology was on Oprah. And it was a guy who had thrown soup on me to pay me back for dropping soup on these 2 guys. Of course, I cried. And people said, did you accept his apology? And it was 40 years later, and I said, yes, because when someone apologizes, it says it happened. And so I had not known that I had been longing for an apology. And so David became really good friends with Spirit. When he died, his family said, your family, you're supposed to be sitting with the family at the funeral. Okay, so, and he explained on Oprah what had transformed him. And he was a little pawn of people who were more powerful than he was to make him do things. He was a pest. He was just horrible. Then
You were speaking.
I was speaking in Peru, Nebraska, and I was talking at a university, and I was saying silent witnesses. So this woman stood up and said, I went to Central, and I was a silent witness, and I'm sorry. And so we go toward each other like the slow motion thing. We're both crying, you know. So, I mean, you have to understand that it worked both ways. People need to apologize, and people need to be apologized to. So those are the kinds of things. I work with lots of high school students, And those are the kinds of lessons I try to explain. Apology helps both people. So I had last night a person who was from Louisiana, and he said, I came here to apologize to you for what happened. I would have been one of those people who was trying to hurt you, and I want to apologize. So here I am, 77 instead of 29, and I am touched by that last night. So, I mean, it goes on forever. Two things. As a social worker, I used to go to different kinds of therapeutic lessons on the pretense that I was learning it for my clients, but it was really for me. And one of the things I did over time was called psychodramatic body work. And the idea of that is to go to your most basic emotion. So it's a really hard work, and you just keep going and keep going. And I really thought that my most basic emotion about Central was anger. But when I got to my most basic emotion, it was sorrow. So that was a release for me. That's the lesson when I say, you might think you're mad. You may be not mad. Maybe you're just sad and you don't know how to express it. So it all kind of fits together. I'm working on it. It's a life sentence. That experience sent me to learn so much. I understand racism. I understand all that really, really. And who did I say? When I died, this all goes away. And I regret that because it's a whole life of learning and working with people and trying to help them understand it and unlearn it and work with it and all that. So it's just, it all comes down to some kind of basic who we are as people. What we need people to apologize to us. We need to apologize to people. I mean, it's really kind of simple in the...
But it's been a journey, and so, again, the bridge, so when she got suspended and ultimately expelled, she had to leave her family behind. My Aunt Phyllis was a young girl when she had to leave her family in Little Rock, and she didn't return to her home, like to live for 30 years? 40 years. 9. So in other words, that tore apart the family, and not just hers, but many families. But the Little Rock crisis was something that she was raising 6 kids. We had goats, pigs, horses, cats, all kinds of animals. She was on a farm, canning. So this was something that was completely pushed aside. And so what ended up happening is in 1999, we moved to the United States. And then she worked in the Clinton administration, and then her brother, Bobby, who was a freedom fighter, was ill, and she decided she needed to go home. So she came back to Little Rock. I ended up staying. So me, my mother, my aunt, my granny, Imogene Brooks Brown, my little sister Layla, we sat around the living room table for 10 years.
And Phyllis's son, yeah.
And Pharaoh, my cousin, and many others. But she was then, and then I started working at the Central High Historic Site. I don't know if forced is the word, but twist of fate, she came to revisit this very painful time in her history. And so I feel as though has been a healing. And I think that you are not only a part of our family's healing, but Little Rock's healing.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think coming back, I think you and I think, you know, that table in my mom's house, oh my God, radical stuff went down, okay? My brother went away from home and went to Oakland and became a Black Panther. He came back, organized all the little hood rats, and they changed that town, right? And a lot of that stuff was happening. You were at that table. She was in SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. That house has seen a lot of stuff, right? And because you don't necessarily want to do it, you have to do it. That's the whole thing. That's where it's like, I don't really get to choose what I do. It chooses me. And I'm really, we were talking about the universe speaking. I do not know what I'm going to say because it has to be truth. It can't be phony. I can't do the same thing twice because, first of all, she says it's my story. It's in here. I can tell it. And I can tell it however I want. But to try to get the essence of both the beauty and the terror of that story. James Baldwin, one of my favorite expressions. American history is more beautiful and more terrible than we know. And so, to me, often I'm trying to bring not the horror, but the essence, the beauty of that story and what's possible and how we can't stop hurting our children. If we think it was the black kids who were hurt, no, all the kids in Little Rock, in that school, and in this nation are hurt every day, for goodness sakes. And yet we claim that we care about them. We claim that they're our most important resource, but we don't take care of them. We don't educate them. Well, some we do, some we don't. We don't protect them from violence. We don't even bother teaching them nonviolence. The concept of nonviolence is maligned as the Martin Luther King thing. I've asked schools to put posters of the principles of nonviolence in their school, and I've gotten letters from teachers saying our whole school transformed because we had never given the kids any way to look at life or analyze it from a nonviolent way. Everything we teach them is about violence. So, okay.
We've got some young folks over here. I mean, I saw 3 hands go up at one time. You're going to have to pick amongst yourselves. Who was first?
He what? Right?
Right here? All right. Please stand up. Tell us who you are and what school you're representing and your question.
My name is Christian Solvar from Lake Hamilton. I was just wondering, did your experience at Little Rock High School lessen your relationship with God since you were, or greatly, since you were, said you had a minister with you?
That's a very interesting question, and I tend not to answer it because I think it's super personal, and I sometimes thought at that time, if there had been a God, he wouldn't let that happen. And what, because a lot of the anti-integration came from the white churches. And so I'm thinking, what is this? This is not what I learned in church. So it was very confusing. And let me say I'm still confused. Yeah, I tend to avoid that question because I really didn't find that if I did pray, it was, can I die, please, so I don't have to go to school tomorrow? That's a good question, and I get asked it all the time, and most of the time I dodge it because I didn't feel. When I said, I was in the Glee Club class, and so I learned all the songs, and the girls in that class were really nice. And the teacher was really nice. So I decided in my horrible Minnie Jean way to say, if I'm in the Glee Club class and we are doing all the songs, I want to be in the concert. It was a Christmas concert. I will tell you that I would not have stood, nor would I have had the opportunity, but I would not have tried to be in a concert in front of all those Christians, okay? No, because they wanted to kill me. And they expressed that in church. So, it kind of dampens one's faith, right?
But interestingly enough, it's not necessarily related, but in a somewhat is I'm constantly processing just your experience, and she gets asked a lot, would you do it again? Would you send your children? And it's, you know, you have to recontemplate this. She has many grandchildren, like, wow, could I have done this, et cetera, et cetera. So I say that to say, I interviewed her a couple years ago, and I was really trying to get at the heart of like what this experience, how it transformed her life. And she said that as horrific and as traumatizing, and the fact that it's a life sentence, it really instilled in her true compassion. And when she said that, it literally took me 2 years to understand the depth of what she meant by compassion. And so I think it's not related to religion necessarily, but it is something that I feel it's like a phoenix from within you has risen compassion from this experience. And you're able to look at religion, not religion, the players of the crisis, and see it from an elevated, higher self.
Yeah, I mean, I think we make a mistake by categorizing things into categories. Am I a religious person? Very. Do I go to church? No. What is religion, and how does it get expressed? And is it expressed? I don't know. So that's what I said. I got bewildered then. I'm still bewildered, and I'm still working on it. Am I compassionate toward all people? Do I care about people? I do. And I feel, as a non-religious person, I think I express more care for all people than I see in religions. So, yeah, I don't know. And, well, you know what? We should always be questioning stuff. You know, until I die, I'm going to be asking questions, and I'm going to be learning. It's a life thing, if I can, okay? So we should always be learning more, questioning, checking out, getting other people's opinions, and being willing to change. I think that may be the key here. My dad never went to church. In about 85, he became the most religious person you ever saw in your life. So I still have a few years.
We're only 29, so. We have a special presentation right now, and I know we have one representative from the city, Miss Minnie Lennox, the Director of Human Resources for the city, along with, oh, do we have Mayor McCabe here today? Mayor Pat McCabe, if you two would come forward, please.
Oh, wow. Ooh, a key. I like that.
The key.
Okay, do you mind if I don't stand? Because
no, you're fine. You're fine. Minnie?
Yeah. Who? Which Minnie?
This is me. I think, you know, all of us in this room at one time or another were 14 and 15 years of age. And what you experienced at that tender age is, I'm not sure how many of us would have been able to do the same. You know, that's a testament to you and the 8 that joined you at Little Rock Central. And the message that you have provided here today is very strong. As you said, if you're going to get even smart. You don't do it through violence, and you continue to grow internally and through your works. And that message resonates with everybody here today. You know, that door was closed for you on that very first day, and it was weeks later that it opened. And we have something here for you that gives you a key to open up a door here in Hot Springs.
That's great.
And we are so appreciative of you coming here and spending an hour with us. And Minnie, do you want to present the key?
Yes. This key is presented on behalf of the mayor of the City of Hot Springs and the board of directors, and it's presented to Minnie Jean Brown Trickey, Little Rock 9 member, September 13, 2018, by the City of Hot Springs mayor and board of directors. This is the key to the City of Hot Springs. What you did in the 50s opened a door for many people, and you are still opening doors, but we're giving you the key to the city and letting you know that the door is already open.
Thank you so much. That is just so great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That is so lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, we're
you
about to
very
wrap
much.
up, and so I think we're going to have an opportunity. These fine ladies have offered to stick around for a few moments. What we're going to do is we're going to have some group pictures with our schools first, and I appreciate your patience doing this. You all may stick around too if you'd like to come and say hi face to face and shake hands and say a few words with Minnie in spirit. With Jean in spirit, Minnie Jean in spirit. Let's do that. And then Melanie, what time is the interview? What time do we need to? As soon as possible. Okay. We're going to get some group pictures real quick. You guys stick around and have your turn as well. And thank you all for coming. Thank you so much to each of our sponsors for making this happen today. We appreciate you all. Thank you.